Om Swastiastu and Namaste and Aloha from Bali, Indonesia. I'm Dr. Jinju Desala, also known as the Goddess Brain Doctor, here to assist you in activating your Goddess Brain, awakening your feminine wisdom, and living your divine purpose. I'm also the co-founder and director of NaiAsa Institute, where we weave science, soul, and soma for the purpose of healing, transformation, and empowerment. And today I have a story that I would like to share with you, kind of a personal story. And it has to do with beauty. It has to do with the beauty of this island of Bali, Indonesia. And it also has to do with the beginnings of NaiAsa Institute. Some of you who have been following me and NaiAsa Institute and our family for a while have asked the question, how did we end up in Bali? And how did this transformational flow, these flow programs, how did they originate? I recently came across one of my journals from the year 2011. So this is the year 2022, 11 years ago, and I had completely forgotten about this journal entry that I wrote in my first visit, my first time ever to Bali, Indonesia. And as I read it, it took me back to that time. Not only did it take me back to that time, I ended up in tears because I'd completely forgotten that I wrote these words. So first, in the next few minutes, I'm going to give you a little more context for why I'm feeling inspired to share this. And then I'm going to go into the story. And so I want you to really get comfortable, get cozy. This is one of those videos that you can just lay down and listen to. Actually, you can light a candle and just enjoy. And before giving a little more context and also getting into the story, I want to share a couple of quotes with you. Okay, the first quote is, "Love is not the fabric of everything. The fabric of everything is beauty. And our reaction to seeing beauty is love." Okay, second quote. "People can argue with facts and information forever. If you look at the arguments on climate change, for example, and you can probably switch replace climate change out with many other things in the world right now, it seems the stronger that one side gets with what they think is correct science, the more adamant the other side gets. Speaking to the mind, you see, does not create change. It creates resistance if someone does not agree with us. So, how do we speak? How do you speak to a person's soul? That happens in indigenous cultures through ritual, through song, through drumming, and through story. And I will add, through dance. People, they will argue with facts forever. And this is still part of the quote here. But they can never argue with the truth of our story. That's personal. And as we get our message into the world, the core message will come out of the story of our life. What I realize now, fast forward from 2011 to 2022, and here now in the fourth decade of my life and my story here on earth, just a reminder that sometimes definitely one of the beautiful things about aging, about youthing, about having more years here on this planet is that we get to look back and see how the story is unfolding, and we get to connect all of these different dots. And it's a really powerful exercise, and I don't share story as much as I would like to. And I find myself in a very beautiful place right now, the fourth phase of flow, in a space of deep reflection and rest, relaxation, and just really reflecting in between. We just wrapped up an epic 600 or 200 hour 6-month neurosomatic flow teacher training that many of you are aware of. And we are getting ready for our next retreat, the first one since 2019, since before the pandemic. And it's called Beauty That Transforms. So remember that, beauty that transforms. And so it's really auspicious that this journal entry just came into my field. And I want to share this for a few reasons. One is that when I read it, it took me back to my first experience in Bali and to literally the sheer beauty, the sheer beauty of everywhere I would gaze or look. Everything was so rich with this unique artistry, and also the way that everything grows, also with the architecture and the artistry, and this is part of the story where I could literally feel this shift in my brain. I could literally feel the circuitry of my nervous system, especially in my brain, completely rewiring itself. And as a neuroscientist, I thought, wow, this is really, really interesting. I've only really felt this, a few times in my life. And so as a reminder, right, of the power of beauty that we tend to underestimate, the power of beauty to literally transform the way that we see, and literally transform our energies from the inside out, and can do it on a level, it can transform on a level that can be so healing. And so a reminder in terms of activating your goddess brain and awakening your feminine wisdom, to surround yourself with beauty, to say yes to experiences that will bring more beauty into your life. And, for all of us, we all individually have to sit and reflect and ask ourselves what beauty means to us, to you, because it's going to mean something different. And, in that sense, knowing how powerful beauty is, it should come as no surprise. There have been scientific studies done that have shown the benefits of beauty, in the sense of immersing yourself into nature, of watching a sunrise or a sunset, or sitting at the coast and watching the beauty of the ocean and the waves coming onto shore. And this kind of beauty will bring your whole nervous system into a state of deep and immense and powerful cohesion and coherence and connection, right, between the brain and the heart and everything around and everything within, which has its own plethora of health benefits. I think the last two reasons, just in context of why I feel inspired to share this, to offer one, kind of a personal time capsule and presentation and glimpse of Bali, at least from my perspective. If you want to know a place or a person, you don't read or listen to just one perspective, because it's infinite. And so for anyone who's ever wondered what it would be like to come and immerse yourself in this culture, here's Here's one experience that exists, which is mine. And I offer it as a story so that it can land and speak to your soul and to you at that more subconscious level for you to pick up and receive any messages and any medicine and any gems that are there for you to receive and to take with you to inspire you as you live your divine purpose and your most beautiful and empowered life in this world. So thank you for tuning in. And at this time, I invite you to get really comfortable and enjoy this story. I will circle back to those quotes at the end here. This was March 5th, 2011 in Bali. And it was on a holy day called Nyepi, Silence Day, which I'll get into. And the top of my journal, I called it Bali Revelations. Bali Revelations. Visiting Southeast Asia has been one of my biggest dreams since I was a little girl. Often, geographical Gaia points call on us, just as angels and teachers do in human form. Or perhaps these special places and souls simply respond to our call for growth or that next expansion, that next invitation of our divine purpose. Either way, when we open up to a new adventure, we open up to a new matrix, a new stage on which we get to engage in some of the playful magic of the universe. And if nothing else, we get to hit a certain kind of human reset button so we can clear the residue that is built up on the lenses through which we have been observing and interpreting the world until now. When we leap into the unknown or the unfamiliar, we get to somehow wipe that lens clean of the sticky gunk that has held us in some familiar pattern, for better or for worse, for months, maybe even for years. And when we travel to a new place, we get to interrupt those patterns and we get to see the world again for the first time. And in seeing the world again for the first time, we get an opportunity to see ourselves as if for the first time. Bali Revelations Part 1, Beauty Beyond Belief. This experience of suddenly seeing with new eyes is exactly what happened on my first day in this remote part of the world. My senses were overwhelmed. I traveled for 25 hours across the globe and was suddenly born into a foreign place my physical self could not recognize. Of all my senses, my vision was the most disoriented. My visual field was saturated with more beauty than it could absorb. I never knew that was possible. I mean, quite literally, every square foot of my visual field here is filled with intricate, breathtaking, detailed beauty, both man-made and natural. And my brain just couldn't process it fully. I could feel the workings of my brain trying so hard and almost even dissociating at times into this dreamlike state. And in that state, I could literally feel my neural circuitry rewiring itself to discern what was real and what I was potentially just imagining. I think my mouth was hanging wide open most of my first day in Ubud, the village that I've been staying in. I learned quickly that Bali is unique from all the other islands in Indonesia, for many reasons, one of which has to do with the large-scale migration of Hindu artists escaping the Muslim authorities taking over all the other islands. I haven't been to the other islands, but I have traveled many other parts of the world, And aside from the seemingly unrivaled concentration of art that uniquely characterizes Bali, there is also a seemingly unrivaled, joyous spirit living through the smiles of nearly every Balinese soul I have encountered. I have never been to a place where I can walk down a busy street or remote country road and have every single person I pass smile back at me. And being someone who has often felt self-conscious for smiling too much, this Bali smiling frenzy tickles me to my core. My retreat teacher had mentioned in an email before we arrived that Bali is the safest place in the world to get lost. And now I'm beginning to believe it. And I have to just interject here, 11 years later, I still feel the same way. Yes, the beauty is everywhere in the flora, the fauna, the people, and their spirit. Equally powerful, however, is the magic on this island. Sometimes I hesitate in using this word magic, but I can't seem to think of any other word to describe this dancing vortex of telepathy, synchronicity, and an ancient wisdom that speaks to you through every leaf, every petal, in every lotus flower, through every stone, straight into your awareness. It's almost as if every bit of that beauty is there to channel these codes and these messages from the divine into every fiber of your being through the language of beauty. And I'd wonder if it were just my imagination, except that everywhere I go, I hear stories of other people's unexplainable, enchanted experiences. And I became aware of this magic my first night in Bali while asleep. In my dreamland, I was asked a very powerful series of questions in my dream that revealed a very specific lesson I am here to learn. I was also shown a path for my coaching practice and specific groups I am preparing to work with. This was all in my dream on the very first night on this island. Story for another time. Fast forward to 4 a.m., same night. I woke up suddenly with chills running up and down my spine. And I was too excited to go back to sleep, and instead, it's also jet lagged, but instead I just listened. And I just kept listening until the roosters were cockle-doodle-doing in full force. And then I grabbed my yoga mat and went out onto the front patio as the sun was rising, and then I had my next Bali revelation. In the West and in the modern world in general, we build our lives around work and productivity. It's all about what we're doing, like we're all a bunch of roosters cockle-doodle-doing our ways through each and every day, struggling to make time to be still or to simply just be. Even 5 minutes is too much to ask for some, and that's fine. There's nothing inherently wrong with this, but you have to wonder, why don't we stop to ask why or how? How did we get there? How did we get here? Or better yet, what would happen? What would happen if we just shifted our context, in the context of our purpose and our work, to create new, more playful, joyous ways of being? What if we shifted the context of our lives to invite an element of sacredness to every breath, every meal, and every day? And not so much as individuals, because that shift is happening with many individuals, but more so as a culture. Is it possible that we can really ignite a shift on a mass cultural level? That is something I'm quite impressed with here in Bali, how unified the culture is and how it creates an environment conducive for connection and also for ritual. One of the daily rituals I've fallen in love with here are the offerings of flowers, grains, and incense placed out onto the steps, in the doorways, and in front of all the statues. I was told these offerings, called chanang saris, happen up to 5 times a day. In my first few days here, I felt tempted to begin sowing the seeds to transplant myself, along with my dear fiancé, who was Nova at the time, and my friends and my family, all to Bali, to eventually create a new life here. This is about where I started to cry, because I completely forgot that I had written this. The more and more I think about it, however, I feel more inspired to begin sowing some seeds to transplant Bali to the West. Though, believe me, I wouldn't complain if I were forced to live a good part of my life on this beautiful island, this Bali bubble of bliss. On my first full day in Bali, I actually made friends with one of the workers of the bungalow I was staying at. His name is Nyoman, which is one of the 4 names every man goes by on the island, designated according to what generation he was born in and what the order of his birth, first, second, third, or fourth child into the family. Nyoman was kind, inquisitive, and there was an innocence about him that had me say yes to an afternoon excursion out to some beautiful terraced rice paddies to see flocks of these white birds considered holy and sacred. If you ever go there and you're lucky like me, you can be blessed by overhead gifts from these birds. I was so blessed with a good burn from the exhaust pipe of the little motorbike we were riding as well. I wanted an adventure and I got it. That evening, he took me to his temple where I got to watch a Kechak trance dance and ceremony that he was actually a part of. And I couldn't believe I was actually experiencing a scene from one of my favorite films of all time, Baraka. And now I know where it came from. And by the end of this day, I was exhausted, yet blissed out on all the amazingness I had experienced in just one day. And I still have the scar from the exhaust pipe. And this is also, for anyone coming to Bali, a pretty common initiation. We like to call them Bali kisses. Yeah, it's kind of a wild place, but it's also a beautiful mark of the adventure and something to remind you of the adventure for all the years to come. Now, what brought me to Bali? Bali Revelations Part 2. Poi and yoga at Pernati. After 2 days of settling into Ubud, it was time to begin what brought me to Bali in the first place, a poi and yoga retreat. With this retreat, I have managed to combine several of the greatest loves in my life all into one experience. Travel, poi, dance, flow, and yoga. This retreat has been heaven on earth for me and all the other participants who have traveled from all over the world to be here. I have been waking up with the roosters at 6:15 a.m. every morning for a daily 2-hour morning yoga and meditation session, followed by breakfast, which is followed by 2 hours of yoga and dance lessons, followed by a short break with lunch and pool time, followed by another hour of poi, and a late afternoon yoga and meditation session. Every morning there's dinner either here at the center or in town, followed by music and open playtime in the evenings to practice what we've learned or to play with a new toy, like a flow wand, which I've also fallen in love with, and just to connect with the other adventurous circus souls at the retreat. It is quite an experience. I've never been surrounded by so much talent within such an intimate setting. Quite a few people here, without a doubt, some of the best, most talented, gifted poi spinners or performers in the world. It's a little intimidating at times, but the openness of everyone and the eagerness to share and to teach quickly dissolves any sense of competition or judgment and creates this amazing environment to simply play, and learn. I started playing with poi a couple of years ago. I first learned about poi through hula as a little girl when I was growing up in Hawaiian, the Polynesian form of this art form. But I picked it up after a Burning Man festival experience, more as a hobby, and it quickly transformed into a sacred space that I would frequent whenever I would hit a mental or emotional block that had me spiraling into some dark direction. Dancing with my poi was my way of moving literally out of one reality and into another. And now it is evolving into a whole new world. Little did I know 11 years ago what it would evolve into. Like any sport, it has become a metaphor for life in that it presents opportunities to unlock certain patterns and create new ones. We all need something like this, I believe, to bring the essence of learning and life back into the body, to be able to move through those challenging times with some vitality and some lightness. I am learning so much here about yoga, poi, dance, and about myself, about this culture, and in conversation with the others about the world. The intensity of learning is sometimes overwhelming, but I'm open to it and doing my best to accept all that I cannot absorb and let it be okay. I think the most fascinating aspect of my learning here, and in general, and as I get older, is the way more and more dots begin to connect. Even the two most seemingly irrelevant concepts are always connected at some level. And the more we expand the observer that we are, the more we expand our own consciousness and our ability to see, the more possibilities begin to emerge for life and the more connections we can see. And most importantly, I'm being reminded of the importance of play and learning to not take myself and life so seriously. In addition to poi and yoga, we are taking a few excursions. A few days ago, we went to visit a beautiful temple, Ganung Kawi. What can I say? I love temples so much. And if I could, I would have several built in every town and city in the US and beyond. And someday, my coaching office will be a temple. Fast forward, we are building a temple on our land here in Bali as I speak. After exploring the temple, we were blessed with the opportunity to visit an orphanage. A couple of the sweet souls in our group made arrangements to do a bit of a circus show for the kids there and invited the rest of us to come and watch. Suri of Iluzao, who specializes in circus and fire shows, has been involved with various humanitarian projects around the world and has touched my heart and this entire retreat with her magic and creativity. Wherever you are, Suri, thank you to this day, eternally. It has been a full week. Indeed, I've managed to fill up a 32 gig card with photos and videos in just 1 week. And today is actually a very special holy day in Bali called Nyepi, a day of silence to welcome the new year and to convince the evil spirits that this island is uninhabited. Last night we went walking through the village to see the ogo-ogo paper mache monsters that get burned on the new moon evening before Nyepi. Today, the entire island is basically shut down, and tonight we will sit in the dark. Planes are being rerouted, and even the airport is closed. Though I can hear the voices of children in the distance and somehow sense we are taking this holiday more seriously than the locals. Either way, what a great opportunity this is to take on a day of silence and introspection with thousands, tens of thousands, perhaps millions of others. I'm grateful for this time to process all that I have experienced in Bali so far, and I've been writing all day. I hope you have enjoyed this story and that it inspires you to say yes to your next adventure, to embrace the unknown, and to never underestimate the power of beauty that transforms. The end. Thank you for listening in. And I didn't mention this, but because I'd forgotten about this writing, you are the first to hear it. This is the first time I'm sharing this with anyone besides my husband, especially publicly. But I thought it would be, I feel it as a really sweet and significant time capsule, and circling back to those quotes. Love is not the fabric of everything. The fabric of everything is actually beauty. And our reaction to seeing beauty is love. These are the words of Dr. Zach Bush. If you don't know him, look him up. He is a phenomenal thought leader, new paradigm physician in this world. And I've been sitting with these words, and I invite you to sit with them too. And feeling the truth of these words. And you can reverse it. And if you think of everything that you have come to love in this world or in yourself, then it's because you're able to find and see the beauty in it. The second quote is by a transformational author, Gail Larson. The story about how do you speak to a person's soul. I actually won't read the whole thing because it was kind of lengthy. But just the proposition, and I share it as an invitation. Next time you catch yourself in that repetitive, vicious cycle of going back and forth inside of a very mental, logical, and rational debate, and you find that maybe you're not getting anywhere with that, to invite yourself to step out of that cycle and come back to your heart and a story that lives inside of your heart, and you can share it not in a way to convince anyone of anything, but just as a way of sharing an expression of your soul that nobody can argue with, and everyone can extract truth and beauty from. With that, thank you for taking the time to witness and to listen to my story. And I would love to know if there was any insight that came through for you, if it helped you in any way. Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you, and share it with a friend. And last but not least, if you've ever dreamed of coming to Bali, join us for one of our retreats, especially beauty that transforms. It would be my greatest honor, and it always is my greatest honor and pleasure to co-create and to hold that space for the most epic magic and medicine for people to experience on this most amazing mystical, magical island of the gods and of the goddesses. With that, I wish you a beautiful rest of your day, evening. Sending deep breaths of gratitude. And as we say here in Bali, Om Santi, 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 Om.